The Valenthi Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They controlled 300 star systems. Their ships patrolled every corner of known space. Their sensors watched everything that moved. No species could sneeze without the Valenthi knowing about it. Senior Observer. Valric sat at his station on the Kathrani border outpost. His job was simple. Watch the screens. Report anything unusual? In 40 years of service, nothing unusual had ever happened. The Empire was too powerful. No one dared to challenge them. Then his sensors detected something new. A small ship emerged from uncharted space. It was only 200 meters long. Its engines were primitive. Its weapons were laughable. The ship sent a message requesting permission to dock. They called themselves humans. They came from a planet called Earth. They wanted to establish diplomatic relations. Thalrix looked at the tiny vessel on his screen, felt a ripple of amusement run through his scales. These humans were like children knocking on the door of a giant. He granted them permission to dock and filed his report. Another primitive species had discovered space travel. The Empire would catalog them, assign them a protected territory, forget about them. Commander Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon as the docking clamps engaged. She was a practical woman in her early 50s. Gray streaks ran through her dark hair. Laugh lines surrounded her eyes. She had commanded vessels for 30 years. But this mission was different from anything she had done before. Her first officer, a young man named Kevin Price, monitored the communications array. His fingers moved nervously across the controls. He was fresh out of the academy, barely 25 years old, and this was his first deep space assignment. The Valenthi are scanning us, Kevin reported. They're cataloging everything. Our weapons, our engines, our crew complement. Lisa nodded calmly. Let them scan. That's exactly what we want. Kevin looked confused, but said nothing. He had learned quickly that Commander Grant always had a plan, even when that plan made no sense to anyone else. The Valenthi welcomed them with cold efficiency. They assigned a diplomatic liaison named Kravith to escort the humans through the station. Kravith was tall and covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now, those scales showed a pale blue that Lisa had learned meant condescension. Your vessel is quite small, Kravith observed as they walked through gleaming corridors. Is this the largest ship your species possesses? Lisa smiled politely. The Horizon is our most advanced Explorer-class vessel. We're very proud of her. Kravith made a sound that might have been a laugh. How charming. The Empire will be happy to offer your species protection. Young civilizations like yours often struggle to survive without guidance. The diplomatic meetings lasted 17 days. The Valenthi offered humanity a protected territory designation. This generous gift would limit human expansion to a mere 40 star systems. They explained this was for humanity's own safety. The galaxy was dangerous. Primitive species often made enemies they could not handle. Lisa accepted every offer with gracious thanks. She praised the Empire's wisdom. She marveled at their technology. She asked innocent questions about their military capabilities, their sensor networks, their patrol routes. The Valenthi answered everything. Why would they hide information from such a harmless species? Kevin watched his commander smile and nod through meeting after meeting. He watched her pretend to be impressed by things that barely qualified as advanced by Earth standards. He watched her play the role of a naive explorer from a backward world. On the 15th day, he finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. Commander, why are we pretending to be so weak? Lisa looked at him for a long moment. Then she gestured for him to follow her to a secure compartment in the ship where no Valenthi sensors could reach. What do you know about the Valenthi Empire, Kevin? They've ruled this region for 12,000 years. They control hundreds of species. They're the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy. And how did they become so powerful? Kevin hesitated. Conquest. They expanded aggressively and absorbed or destroyed anyone who resisted. Lisa nodded slowly. 300 years ago, our long-range telescopes detected signs of their expansion. We watched them consume civilization after civilization. We studied their tactics. We learned their patterns. and we made a decision. She pulled up a holographic display showing a map of human space. Kevin's eyes went wide. We would never let them do to us what they did to others. So we prepared. We built ships they would never see. We developed technology they would never detect. We created weapons they would never imagine. And when we were ready, we sent the horizon to make first contact. The display shifted to show the true extent of human military power. Kevin felt his breath catch in his throat. The Volanthi think we have 300 ships, Lisa continued. They think the horizon represents the peak of our capabilities. They will file us away as a minor species and forget we exist. And that gives us exactly what we need. Time, Kevin whispered. Time to observe. Time to plan. Time to position our forces. And when the moment is right, time to show them what humanity really is. The horizon departed the border station 2 days later. The Volanthi barely noticed. They had already moved on to more important matters. A primitive species from a backwater planet was not worth their attention. Lisa. Grant stood on the bridge as the station shrank on the view screen. In her pocket was a data chip containing everything they had learned. Detailed scans of Volanthi technology, comprehensive star charts, complete military doctrine. The Empire had handed them everything they needed without even realizing it. Sent the coded transmission to Fleet Command, she ordered. Tell Admiral Bennett that Phase 1 is complete. Kevin's fingers moved across the controls. The message shot out into space, bouncing through a network of hidden relay stations that the Volanthi would never find, somewhere in the depths of human space. Admiral Christopher Cole received the transmission. He read it twice, then looked out the viewport of his command ship at the fleet gathered around him. Hundreds of vessels stretched into the darkness. Carriers that measured their length in kilometers. Dreadnoughts bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Support ships carrying enough supplies to sustain a campaign that would last for years. And this was just one fleet. There were 12 others scattered throughout human territory, each one hidden, each one waiting. Cole smiled grimly. The Volanthi had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had grown complacent. They had forgotten that the universe was full of surprises. They were about to remember. He turned to his executive officer. Captain Maria Santos, who stood ready at her station, began Phase 2 preparations. It's time to introduce ourselves properly. The great machine of human military power began to move. And the Volanthi Empire, secure in their ancient dominance, had no idea what was coming. 8 months passed since the humans had come and gone. The Volanthi Empire continued as it always had. Ships patrolled the borders. Planets paid their tribute. Subject species worked and obeyed. The brief visit from the primitive Earth people was already forgotten. Squadron Leader Vorthan commanded 12 interceptors on a routine patrol near the Carthex Nebula. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world. His bones were dense as iron. His muscles could crush steel. In 300 years of military service, he had never met an enemy he could not defeat. The patrol was boring. Nothing ever happened in this sector. Vorthon was thinking about his upcoming leave when his tactical officer spoke. Commander, sensors are detecting something behind the gas giant's fourth moon. Vorthon straightened in his seat. Identify. Unknown configuration. Very large energy signature. Attempting to get visual confirmation, the ship emerged from behind the moon, and Vorthon felt his twin hearts stop beating for a moment. It was a vessel. That much he could see. But the scale was wrong. His sensors reported a length of 18 kilometers. The beam width was nearly 4 kilometers. The hull was covered with weapon emplacements that his computer could not even classify. The energy output exceeded the combined power of his entire home system. That cannot be correct, Vorthon said. His voice was steady, but his scales had gone pale. Run the sensors again. I've run them 5 times, Commander. The readings are accurate. Vorthon stared at the impossible ship. Nothing that size should exist. The largest Volanthi dreadnought was 9 kilometers long, and that had taken 50 years to build. This vessel was twice that size, and carried enough weapons to destroy a planet. This is Squadron Leader Vorthon to Border Command, he transmitted. I am observing an unidentified vessel of unprecedented scale. requesting immediate identification and reinforcement. The response came not from Border Command. It came from the giant ship itself. Volanthi Patrol Squadron. This is the United Earth Navy carrier, George Washington. We are conducting a navigational survey of this region. Please do not be alarmed. Vorthan felt his scales ripple with disbelief. United Earth Navy. Human, the primitive species, with their tiny ships and laughable weapons. The species that the Empire had dismissed as children. Human vessel, you are in violation of the Protected Territory Agreement. Your species is not authorized to operate ships of this classification. Explain yourself immediately. There was a pause. Then a new voice came through the communication system. It was deeper, calmer, and carried a hint of amusement. Squadron Leader, my name is Admiral Christopher Cole of the United Earth Navy. I am afraid there has been a misunderstanding. The vessel you encountered during first contact was a diplomatic scout. It was not representative of our fleet capabilities. Vorthan's tactical officer made a strangled sound. Commander, the Washington is launching additional craft. I am counting 247 smaller vessels emerging from its hangar bays. Vorthan looked at his display. Each of those smaller vessels was larger than a Velinati heavy cruiser. We wanted to introduce ourselves properly, Admiral Cole continued, before any unfortunate misunderstandings occurred. On the bridge of the George Washington, Admiral Cole stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He was a tall man with a shaved head and a scar running down his left cheek. That scar was a souvenir from the Mars uprising 30 years ago. He had earned many scars since then. It's both visible and invisible. Captain Maria Santos monitored the tactical display beside him. She was a compact woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her eyes never stopped moving across the screens. What? The Volanthi Squadron is holding position, she reported. They are transmitting to their border command on multiple frequencies. The encryption is standard military grade. We are breaking it in real time. Cole nodded. Let them report. That is the entire point. The message that reached Volanthi High Command. 3 hours later triggered the largest military mobilization in the Empire's history. 12 interceptors had encountered a human vessel 100 times larger than anything in their database. That vessel carried a fighter complement that outnumbered the entire Cathroni border fleet, and the humans had been polite about it. Emperor Morath Ix received the report in his private chambers. He had ruled the Volanthi for 67 years. He had conquered the Meridian Cluster. He had crushed the Thornaki Rebellion. He had built the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Nothing had ever frightened him. This report frightened him. How is this possible? He demanded. His advisors stood before him, their scales shifting through colors of confusion and fear. Our intelligence said they possessed fewer than 300 ships, none larger than 200 meters. Ouch. Intelligence Minister Kravith stepped forward. His scales were pale with shame. He was the same official who had escorted the humans during first contact. Majesty, we scanned their diplomatic vessel thoroughly. We found nothing to suggest this level of capability. They deceived us completely. They deceived us. Or we deceived ourselves. No one answered. The Emperor looked at the holographic display showing the human ship. It hung in space like a predator waiting to strike. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that this was only the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, reports flooded in from every corner of the Empire. Human vessels had been spotted in 14 different systems. Each sighting was more alarming than the last. A patrol near the Thornaki homeworld encountered a ship measuring 23 kilometers in length. The humans called it a mobile shipyard. It was building more vessels as it traveled. A scout vessel near the Meridian Cluster detected a formation of 60 warships conducting combat exercises. Their weapons fire melted asteroids into slag from distances that should have been impossible. A spy satellite near. The human border captured images of something that defied comprehension. A vessel so large that it blocked out stars as it passed. The humans called it the Abraham Lincoln. It measured 42 kilometers from bow to stern. Admiral Sithrix, commander of the Imperial Fleet. presented her analysis to the Emperor. "They have been hiding their true capabilities for at least a century," she said. Her scales were silver with age, but her mind was sharp as ever. "Every assumption we made about human technology is wrong. Their stealth systems are decades ahead of ours. Their weapons can breach our shields as if they were made of paper. Their ships are built on a scale we cannot match." The Emperor stared at the tactical display. His empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They had crushed every threat that had ever risen against them. And now this small species from a tiny planet had revealed a military power that dwarfed their own. "What do they want?" he asked quietly. Sithric shook her head. "We do not know, Majesty. That is what frightens me most." Somewhere in the depths of space, Admiral Cole reviewed the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. The Valanthi were panicking exactly as planned. Their fleets were mobilizing in all the wrong places. Their commanders were arguing about threats they did not understand. Their Emperor was making decisions based on fear rather than logic. "Phase 2 is complete," Cole said to Captain Santos. "They know we exist. They know we are powerful. Now we give them a choice. And if they choose wrong..." Cole looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 17 species lived under Valanthi oppression. Billions of beings who had never known freedom, who had been told they were inferior, worthless, meant only to serve their masters. Then we teach them what happens when you underestimate humanity. The message went out to Ambassador Daniel Hughes. It was time for Phase 3. Ambassador Daniel Hughes arrived at the Imperial Palace, aboard a shuttle that descended from a vessel so large it was visible from the planet's surface. People in the capital city stopped and stared at the sky. They had never seen anything so massive hanging above their world. It blocked out the sun and cast a shadow across entire districts. Hughes was not an impressive man to look at. He was small and thin, with wire-rimmed glasses and thinning hair. He had a habit of adjusting his tie when he was nervous. He looked more like an accountant than a diplomat representing a military superpower. But appearances could be deceiving. Hughes had spent 40 years in the diplomatic service. He had negotiated peace treaties between nations that had been at war for centuries. He had talked terrorists into releasing hostages. He had convinced dictators to step down without a single shot being fired. His mild appearance was his greatest weapon. People underestimated him, and he used that to his advantage. Emperor Voroth received him in the throne hall. The chamber was designed to intimidate visitors. The ceiling rose 50 meters overhead. The walls were lined with statues of previous emperors, each one larger than life. 300 imperial guards stood at attention, their weapons gleaming in the artificial light. The emperor himself sat on a throne made from the bones of conquered enemies. His scales were the deep purple of royalty. His eyes burned with ancient intelligence. He had ruled this empire for nearly 7 decades. He had never bowed to anyone. Hughes walked through the massive doors without hesitation. He looked around the hall with polite interest, as if he were visiting a museum rather than facing the most powerful being in the known galaxy. He bowed with precise diplomatic courtesy and accepted the offered seat as if he were visiting a friend for dinner. "Your Majesty, thank you for receiving me. I understand there has been some concern about our recent activities along your borders." Vorov's scales shifted to a darker shade. "Concern is an understatement, Ambassador. Your vessels have violated our territory. They have ignored our communications. They have demonstrated military capabilities that you deliberately concealed during first contact. This could be considered an act of war." Hughes nodded thoughtfully. He removed his glasses and cleaned them with a small cloth. He took his time before responding, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "I understand your perspective, Your Majesty. Truly I do. But I would like to offer an alternative interpretation of recent events." He replaced his glasses and met the Emperor's gaze directly. There was no fear in his eyes, no nervousness, just calm certainty. 12,000 years ago, your empire began its expansion. You conquered hundreds of species. You enslaved billions of sentient beings. You built your civilization on the bones of those too weak to resist you. The throne room fell silent. No one had ever spoken to the Emperor this way. The guard shifted uncomfortably, their hands moving toward their weapons. Hughes continued as if he had not noticed. "We are not too weak to resist you." Vorath leaned forward on his throne. "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" "It is a statement of fact. We did not hide our capabilities during first contact because we planned to attack you. We hid them because we wanted to give you a choice. The same choice you never offered to the Thornaki, or the Meridians, or the 17 other species you have driven to extinction." The Emperor's scales had gone pale. "You know nothing about those species." "We know everything about them." Hughes pulled a small device from his pocket and activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air between them. Planets, cities, faces. Thornaki were artists and philosophers. They created music so beautiful that recordings of it still bring tears to the eyes of those who hear it. You destroyed their civilization because they refused to pay tribute. The display shifted to show another species. The Meridians were scientists. They were on the verge of developing faster than light travel when your fleets arrived. You saw them as a potential threat, so you bombed their homeworld until nothing remained but ash. Image after image appeared. Species after species. World after world. Hughes recited their histories without emotion, laying out the crimes of the Empire like evidence in a trial. "We have studied your history for 300 years, Your Majesty. We know what you are. We know what you do to those who cannot defend themselves. And we made a decision." He deactivated the display and looked directly at the Emperor. "You can be our enemies, or you can be our neighbors. But you cannot be our masters. We have seen what happens to species that accept your protection. We have no intention of joining them." Vorath sat in silence for a long moment. His advisors exchanged nervous glances. No one knew how to react. The Empire had always been the one making demands. They had never been on the receiving end. "What exactly are you proposing?" the Emperor finally asked. Hughes adjusted his tie. "We are proposing a new relationship. One based on equality rather than dominance. You will release the species you have enslaved. You will dismantle your offensive military capabilities. You will accept oversight from an independent council that will ensure you do not return to your old ways. And if we refuse, then we will dismantle your empire system by system until nothing remains. We have spent a century preparing for this conversation. We have the ships, the weapons, and the will to do it. The only question is whether you will force us to prove it." The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Vorath looked at the small human sitting before him. This unimpressive man with his glasses and his tie had just threatened to destroy an empire that had lasted 12,000 years. And the worst part was that Vorath believed he could do it. "You speak of equality," the Emperor said slowly. "But you are clearly more powerful than we are. What stops you from doing to us what we did to others?" Hughes smiled for the first time. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "That is an excellent question, Your Majesty. 300 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself. We fought wars that killed billions of our own people. We poisoned our planet. We came within a hair of extinction, and we learned something from that experience." He leaned forward slightly. "We learned that power without responsibility is just destruction with extra steps. We learned that conquest creates enemies who will eventually rise against you. We learned that the only sustainable path forward is cooperation, not domination." Pretty words. But words are easy. Yes, they are. Which is why we are prepared to prove ourselves through actions. Help us build something better than empire. Help us create a galaxy where species can thrive without fear. Work with us, and we will work with you. Hughes stood and straightened his jacket. "You have 1 week to consider our offer. After that, we will proceed with or without your cooperation. I hope you choose wisely." He bowed once more and walked out of the throne room. Behind him, the most powerful being in the known galaxy sat in stunned silence, trying to understand how his world had changed so completely in the span of a single conversation. The shuttle carried Hughes back to the human vessel waiting in orbit. Admiral Cole was waiting for him in the briefing room. "How did it go?" Hughes collapsed into a chair and rubbed his eyes. The calm certainty he had displayed in the throne room was gone, replaced by exhaustion. "They are terrified, which means they are dangerous. Frightened empires do stupid things. You think they will accept our terms? Hughes looked out the viewport at the planet below. Billions of Valenthi lived on that world. Most of them had never done anything wrong. They were just ordinary people living under a government they had not chosen. I think they will attack us, and then we will have to show them that we meant every word. Cole nodded grimly. The fleet is ready. The liberation forces are in position. When they move, we move, and billions will die. Yes, but billions more will finally be free. Hughes said nothing. He just stared at the stars and wondered if there had been another way. If somehow, somewhere, they could have found a path that did not lead through fire and blood, but history rarely offered easy choices. And humanity had learned long ago that peace sometimes required war. The Imperial Council debated for 7 days following the ambassador's departure. The arguments grew heated. Factions formed and dissolved as the full scope of humanity's power became clear. Some advisors urged immediate surrender. Others demanded a preemptive strike. A few suggested negotiation, hoping to buy time for the Empire to rebuild its strength. Emperor Voreth listened to them all. He sat on his throne and watched his most trusted advisors tear at each other like wounded animals. 12,000 years of certainty had been shattered in a single week. The empire that had never known fear was drowning in it. Intelligence reports flooded in from every corner of their territory. Human vessels had been spotted in systems that the Valenthi considered impenetrable. Their stealth technology allowed them to appear and disappear like ghosts. Their sensors could detect Valanthi ships from distances. That should have been impossible, but the most disturbing news came from the Kathrani border. A human civilian transport had been intercepted and boarded by an Overrider patrol commander. He had hoped to capture humans for interrogation, to learn something useful about their weaknesses. What he found instead destroyed what remained of the Empire's confidence. They were colonists, Admiral Sithrix reported to the Council. Families, children. The vessel was carrying 12,000 humans to a new settlement. A civilian ship carrying 12,000 passengers? Voreth asked. How large was it? Sithrix consulted her notes. Her scales were gray with exhaustion. She had not slept in days. Approximately the same size as our standard cargo haulers, Majesty. Perhaps 600 meters in length? Council chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Valanthi cargo haulers of that size could support perhaps 2,000 passengers at maximum capacity. The humans had built life support systems 6 times more efficient. Their civilian technology is more advanced than our military systems, Kravis said quietly. We have been fools. Voreth slammed his fist against the arm of his throne. Enough self-pity? I want solutions, not complaints. How do we defeat them? Admiral Sithrix stepped forward. Majesty, I do not believe we can defeat them in open combat. Their ships are larger, faster, and more heavily armed. Their weapons bypass our shields entirely. Their commanders anticipate our tactics before we execute them. Then what do you suggest? Surrender. Accept their terms. Preserve what we can of our civilization and hope that they are sincere about building a partnership rather than an empire. The war faction erupted in outrage. General Throvex, commander of the ground forces, pushed forward through the crowd. Surrender? You would have us grovel before these primitives. We have ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. We will not bow to a species that was living in caves when our ancestors built their first starships. Those primitives have 42-kilometer warships, Sithrix replied coldly. Our pride will not protect us from their weapons. The argument continued for hours. Voreth listened, weighing each position, considering each option. In the end, he made the decision that emperors had made throughout history when facing impossible odds. He chose pride over survival. We will attack, he announced. The chamber fell silent. We will commit the full strength of our reserve fleet to a single, decisive strike. We will show these humans that the Valanthi do not surrender. Meanwhile, on the orbital platform above Earth's moon, Admiral Cole convened a meeting of the United Earth Naval Command. The chamber was simple and functional. No thrones, no statues, just clean lines and practical design. 37 admirals and fleet commanders filled the seats. They represented every major nation that had contributed to the unified space program. Chinese, American, European, African, Indian. The old divisions of Earth had been set aside a century ago. Now, there was only humanity. The Volanthi are going to attack, Cole announced. Our intelligence indicates they will commit approximately 3,000 warships to a preemptive strike against our positions near the Carthex Nebula. Admiral Yuki Tanaka, commander of the Pacific Fleet, studied the tactical display. 3,000 ships. That is everything they have. Not quite everything, but close. They are betting everything on a single decisive battle. They believe that if they can destroy our forward forces, we will be demoralized and negotiate from a position of weakness. They believe wrong, Captain Maria Santos said. Cole nodded. Yes, they do. Which is why we are going to give them exactly what they want. We will meet their fleet at Carthex with a minimal force. 47 ships. Murmurs rippled through the assembled commanders. Admiral Benjamin Hayes, the oldest member of the command, stroked his gray beard thoughtfully. 47 against 3,000? Even with our technological advantage, those are steep odds. The odds are irrelevant. We are not trying to win a battle. We are trying to send a message. When 3,000 Volanthi ships engage 47 human vessels and lose, the entire galaxy will understand what we are capable of. Cole activated a secondary display showing 17 highlighted worlds throughout the Empire. Simultaneously, we will execute Protocol Aurora. These are the home worlds of species currently enslaved by the Volanthi. We have been in covert contact with resistance movements on EAC, H-World for the past decade. When our fleet engages the enemy, they will rise. Our support forces will ensure the uprisings succeed. The scope of the plan was staggering. 17 simultaneous planetary liberations coordinated with a major fleet action. The logistics alone would have seemed impossible to previous generations. Admiral Hayes leaned forward. We are proposing to defeat the Volanthi fleet, liberate 17 occupied worlds, and restructure an entire quadrant of the galaxy in a single operation. Cole smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. We have been planning this for 100 years, Admiral. Every ship we built, every weapon we developed, every officer we trained has been aimed at this moment. We are ready, and the cost? High. Many good people will die tomorrow, but many more will finally be free. The meeting concluded with final assignments and departure times. The admirals returned to their fleets. The massive machinery of human military power began to move on the Thorniki homeworld. A woman named Sethka received a coded transmission in the basement of her family's home. She was old by her species standards, with gray fur and tired eyes. She had been fighting the Volanthi occupation her entire life. Her parents had fought before her. Her grandparents before them. 8 generations of resistance. 8 generations of failure. The Empire was too strong. They had too many ships, too many soldiers, too many weapons. Every uprising had been crushed. Every leader had been executed. Hope had become a luxury no one could afford. But the transmission changed everything. The humans are coming, she told her cell leaders. Tomorrow, when the battle begins, we rise. This time, we will have help. Similar messages went out to every occupied world. The Meridian remnants hiding in underground bunkers. The Crethini rebels operating from jungle camps. A dozen other species who had never stopped dreaming of freedom. On the bridge of the carrier, Benjamin Franklin, Rear Admiral Lisa Grant, prepared for battle. She had been promoted after the success of the first contact mission. Now she would command the defense of Carthex. Kevin Price, now a full commander, stood beside her. He had grown in the years since that first mission. The nervousness was gone, replaced by quiet confidence. 47 ships against 3,000, he said. When I signed up for this, I did not expect those kinds of odds. Lisa smiled. Would you rather be somewhere else? No, ma'am. I cannot think of anywhere I would rather be. She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Volanthi fleet was approaching. 3,000 warships carrying the hopes of an empire. They believed they were coming to crush a threat. They had no idea they were walking into history. The battle tomorrow will change everything, Lisa said quietly. Win or lose, the galaxy will never be the same. We are going to win. Yes, but victory always comes with a price. Remember that, Kevin. Every ship we destroy had a crew. Every life we take was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. We fight because we must, not because we want to. Kevin nodded slowly. It was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his career. Across the void, the final pieces moved into position. Human fleets and Velanthi armadas, resistance fighters, and occupation forces. An empire that had ruled for 12,000 years and a species that had nearly destroyed itself barely 3 centuries ago. Tomorrow, they would meet, and the galaxy would learn what humanity was truly capable of. The Battle of Carthax Nebula began at dawn. It's measured by Earth Standard Time. 3,000 Velanthi warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. They filled the tactical displays like a swarm of angry insects, their weapons charged. Their shields at maximum. Emperor Vorath himself commanded from the Pride of Velanth, the largest and most powerful dreadnought in the Imperial fleet. He had come to witness the destruction of the human threat personally. He wanted to see their ships burn. He wanted to hear their final transmissions as they realized their mistake. Enemy vessels detected, his tactical officer reported. 47 ships. They are holding position near the nebula's edge. Vorath felt his scales shift with satisfaction. 47 ships. The humans were either arrogant or stupid. Either way, this battle would be over in minutes. All ships, advance. Standard attack formation. Show them what happens to those who threaten the Empire. The Velanthi fleet surged forward. 3,000 warships moving as one. The accumulated military might of 12 millennia focused on a single point in space. On the bridge of the Benjamin Franklin, Rear Admiral Lisa Grant watched them come. Her face showed no emotion. Her voice remained steady as she issued orders. Deploy the interference net. Let us see how well they fight when they cannot communicate. The human ships released thousands of small drones. These devices spread through the space between the two fleets, forming an invisible web of electronic warfare systems. The drones were too small to destroy, too numerous to avoid, and when they activated, they tore through Velanthi communications like a knife through paper. Suddenly, 3,000 warships could not hear each other. Commanders screamed orders that no one received. Pilots called for help that never came. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos within minutes. Phase 1 complete, Kevin Price reported. Their command network is down. They are completely blind. Lisa nodded. Launch all fighters. The 47 human carriers opened their hangar bays. 7,000 fighters poured into space, each one piloted by veterans of the Mars Uprising and the Europa campaign. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. They knew the Velanthi tactics. They knew their weaknesses. And they showed no mercy. The Velanthi fighters outnumbered them nearly 3-1. It did not matter. Without coordination, without leadership, 18,000 fighters became 18,000 individual targets. The human pilots swept through them like wolves through sheep, their weapons finding gaps in shields that should not have existed. Emperor Vorath watched in horror as his fighter screen disintegrated. Half his interceptors were gone in the first 20 minutes. The survivors fled in every direction, desperate to escape the slaughter. Concentrate all fire on the largest human vessel, he ordered. Destroy their flagship. But his orders went nowhere. The communication systems were dead. Each ship fought alone, making decisions based on incomplete information and growing panic. The human dreadnoughts began their advance. There were only 12 of them, escorted by the 47 carriers. 12 ships against nearly 3,000. But each dreadnought measured its length in kilometers. Each one carried weapons that the Velanthi had never encountered. The first shots struck the Imperial line, and Vorath finally understood just how badly he had miscalculated. Velanthi shields, the finest in the galaxy, simply did not stop the human weapons. Energy beams passed through them like light through glass. Missiles penetrated defensive screens and detonated inside hulls. Ships that had served the Empire for centuries vanished in balls of white fire. "How is this possible?" Vorath demanded. "Our shields should stop any known weapon." His science officer was pale with terror. "These are not known weapons, Majesty. The energy signatures do not match anything in our database. They are targeting our reactor cores directly, bypassing all defensive systems." The battle had become a massacre. The Lanthe ships exploded by the dozen, then by the hundred. Their return fire barely scratched the human vessels. Shields that should have failed held firm. Hulls that should have buckled absorbed punishment that would have destroyed any other ship in the galaxy. In 3 hours, 1,000 Volanthe ships were gone. In 4 hours, 2,000. The survivors fled in every direction, their morale shattered. Their belief in Imperial invincibility destroyed forever. Emperor Vorath's flagship drifted powerless in the void. A human weapon had struck the pride of Velant's engineering section, disabling everything without destroying the ship. They had been captured, not killed. Somehow that felt worse. Admiral Cole's transmission reached every surviving Velanthe vessel, on every frequency. "Your Majesty, your fleet is destroyed. Your border defenses have collapsed. At this moment, 17 of your subject worlds are declaring independence, and our forces are ensuring the transitions occur peacefully." Vorath sat in his command chair, surrounded by the smoking ruins of his bridge. His guards stood frozen, unsure whether to fight or surrender. His advisors had fled or died. He was alone with his defeat. "You have 2 choices," Cole continued. "You can continue fighting, in which case we will dismantle your empire system by system until nothing remains. Or you can accept our terms: immediate release of all enslaved populations, dissolution of your offensive military capabilities, full cooperation with a transitional government." "And if I accept?" Vorath asked quietly. "What happens to my people?" "They learn to live without empire. They learn to build rather than destroy. They become part of something larger than conquest and domination." Ambassador Hughes appeared on the view screen. He was standing in the Imperial Palace, surrounded by Volanthe officials who had already surrendered. "Your Majesty, your species built an empire by exploiting the weak. Ours nearly destroyed itself learning the cost of that approach. We decided that if we ever found another civilization following the same path, we would offer them the chance to change." Hughes adjusted his glasses. The gesture that had once seemed nervous now seemed almost threatening. "We carry the memory of every species you destroyed. The Thornaki, the Meridians, 17 others whose names you have forgotten. Today, we honor them by ending what you began 12,000 years ago." Vorath looked around at his ruined ship, his defeated fleet, his crumbling empire. For the first time in his long life, he understood what it meant to be small. "We accept your terms," he said, 6 months later. Ambassador Hughes stood on a balcony overlooking the newly established Interstellar Council chambers. The neutral world of Harmony Station had been built specifically for this purpose, a place where all species could meet as equals. Admiral Cole stood beside him, watching delegates from 47 species take their seats for the first time. Some were human. Some were Volanthe. Most were species that had lived under Imperial rule for thousands of years. "They still fear us," Cole observed. "The liberated species, the Volanthe, everyone. They have just traded one overlord for another." Hughes nodded slowly. "Fear is a reasonable response to power. What matters is what we do with that power." "And what do we do with it?" The ambassador watched a Thornaki delegate rise to address the council. Her name was Sethka. She was the resistance leader who had received the coded transmission before the battle. For the first time in 8 generations, her people spoke freely. "We teach them that they do not have to be afraid. We build something better than empire. We prove that strength can be used to protect rather than dominate." Hughes paused, his tired eyes reflecting the lights of the council chamber. "It will not be easy. It might take centuries. But that has always been the human story. We make terrible mistakes. We nearly destroy ourselves, and then we choose to be better." Below them, Sethka was describing her people's vision for the future. A galaxy where species cooperated instead of conquered, where diversity was celebrated instead of crushed, where power came from building rather than destroying. Cole listened for a moment, then turned back to Hughes. Do you really think we can do it? Build a peaceful galaxy? Hughes smiled. It was a weary smile, but genuine. I think we have to try. Because if we do not, what was the point of all this? The Admiral had no answer. He simply stood with the ambassador, watching as the first day of a new era unfolded before them. Somewhere out there, the ships of the United Earth Navy patrolled the borders of a changed galaxy. They were still powerful, still dangerous. But now they used that power to protect rather than threaten. Rear Admiral Lisa Grant commanded the patrol fleet from the bridge of the Benjamin Franklin. Kevin Price served as her second-in-command. They had traveled a long road from that first diplomatic mission on the horizon. Kevin said quietly, "When I was a kid, I used to read stories about humanity reaching the stars, meeting alien civilizations, having adventures. I never imagined it would be like this." Lisa smiled. "Reality is always messier than stories. But I think we are writing a pretty good one." She looked out at the stars spreading endlessly before them. Each point of light was a sun. Many of those suns had planets. Many of those planets had life. And now, for the first time in 12,000 years, that life had a chance to flourish without fear. It was not the end of conflict. It was not the end of struggle. The galaxy was vast and complicated, full of challenges that humanity had not yet imagined, but it was a beginning. A new chapter in a story that stretched back to the first human, who looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there, and sometimes a beginning was enough.